We begin today the Gemara on Daf Pedal Ramad Aleph, Eisvei, Rav Rav Nachman. So we're in the middle of an Indian here, so let me just be maked in what we're talking about. The Mishnah spoke about a woman that made a neder that she will not have anah from briyos, which means people. So the question is her husband included in briyos or not? So the Gemara brought a few opinions about this. The last opinion, the Gemara said, Rav Nachman says, when a wife says briyos, her husband is not included in briyos. Okay, so the Mishnah said, which makes it sound like that her husband is included. And when she said briyos, she can't have anah from her husband. The only thing she could have anah from is from leket shikcha peya. So Rav Nachman explained that what that means is that after her husband divorces her, so then it'll change. Then her husband will be included in the term briyos because now her husband's not her husband anymore. So now she could have anah from her husband. She can't have anah from her husband. And at that point, she could only have anah from leket shikcha peya. So when the Mishnah says that she could have anah from leket shikcha peya, that's not the main point of the Mishnah. The main point of this Mishnah is coming to explain that when she makes this neder, that she's not going to have anah from briyos, so the husband is not part of briyos, so this is not a neder of inui nefesh. She can still have anah from her husband. Then the Mishnah says a side point. After she gets divorced, now her husband will be part of briyos, and she will not be able to have anah from her husband, but she can still have anah from leket shikcha peya. That's the point that Rav Nachman said before. Just before we go weiter, because there's such a long Ran that discusses this, I want to say at least one nekuda that the Ran speaks about here. The Ran says that from our Mishnah we could learn out b'chlal b'negei to the lashon of Nedarim. When a person makes a neder, and you're including in your neder a certain category of people, and when you made the neder, so those category of people had one status, and then when the neder took effect, those people are not included in this category. For example, a person makes a neder and he says, my neder should not take effect until 30 days from now. And what's his neder? If you remember, we had before in the Masechta, a person makes a neder, I'm not going to have anah from people that are yardei ayam, people that travel overseas. When he makes the neder, so there are certain people that are in that category. When the neder takes effect 30 days later, so those people that were traveling overseas are not anymore. It's other people. So who's included in this neder? Do we go according to when he made the neder, or do we go according to when the neder takes effect? So the Ran says that from what Rav Nachman is saying here, you can see that it's actually both. It goes, what does Rav Nachman say? When she says briyos, I'm not having anah from people, is her husband included or is her husband not included? So Rav Nachman is basically saying that we actually say both. According to what her neder is now, she's married to her husband, so her husband is not briyos because she's married to him. And then later when she gets divorced, so then he is briyos, and then the neder will take effect on him. So the Ran says from here we can see this general thing that we can learn out from the Gemara. When you make a neder, and then the neder took effect at a later point, so it includes the people that are in that category now, and if it changes later, then it'll be those people. That's the point that the Ran says. The Ran brings a Yerushalmi, and he says in Yerushalmi there's an argument about this, but that's what it comes out from the Bavli, from our Gemara. Okay, but the Gemara is going to focus here on one nekuda that Rav Nachman said, that when a wife makes a neder and she says briyos, which means all the people, the husband's not part of all the people, so the husband's not part of the neder, she can still have a anah from him. So on that, Rav Nachman, Rav asks Rav Nachman the question, and this is something we had already before. You're going to say that the husband is not considered part of all people. But Vatnan, we learned in the Mishnah, quoted before already, it's coming here later in this Pedic, Netula nimena Yehudim. If she comes and makes a neder and says that I am removed, I can't have anah from the Jews. So how do we understand this neder? So we learned this before. We understand this neder to mean regarding marital relations. Netula means I'm not going to have hana. How do you have hana? So it's talking about marital relations. So what did it say there? Yafer chelkai. So the husband has the right to nullify his chelik of this neder, meaning that she will be able to have relations with him. V'tehei misham shasai. But v'tehei netulim min haYehudim. But the part that has nothing to do with the husband, the part that she says that I can't have enough from anybody else, so that the husband can't nullify. Okay, so the Gemara now understands that briyos and Yehudim is the same kind of a thing. If you have a question whether she uses the term briyos, which means people, is the husband part of people, or the husband is the husband? A different story. Same thing with the term Yehudim. When she says, I'm disconnected from all the Jews, is her husband included in Yehudim or not? So the Gemara now says, if you're going to say that a husband is not included in Briyais, that's what Rav Nachman said. So if so, it's the same thing over here, that when she said that I'm not going to have any anah from Yehudim, what does that mean? That's not referring to her husband. Her husband's not part of Yehudim. So what did she mean to say? So now, just to explain the words of the Gemara over here, you have to understand as follows. If we're going to say that when she said I'm not going to have anah from Yehudim, which means marital relations, that does not mean her husband. So now if you think about it, the neder that she made just now is mamish pointless. Why? What is she saying? I'm not going to have any anah, any marital relations with anybody else. Regarding her husband's not part of that. Because her husband's not Yehudim, she's married to him. Anyone else, she's an Eishes Ish. She anyways can't have anah from anybody else. So what is she saying? What does a neder mean? So therefore the Gemara here is saying, there's two gears to say in the Gemara, but in the gears of our Gemara, what the Gemara is saying is we're going to have to explain her neder differently. If she says such a lashon Yehudim, she's not talking about marital relations. She's talking about that she's not going to eat from people. She's not going to eat paytas from people. That's what she's saying. And she's saying, I'm not going to eat from all Yehudim, from all Jews, not including her husband. If so, the Gemara's question is, if that's what this lashon of Netula Nimena Yehudim means, Nidrei Inui Nefeshein. If so, this is a regular neder that's considered to be an affliction of the soul. And what's the halacha of a neder that a wife makes that's an affliction of the soul? V'yafrla la'olam. You should have the ability to nullify this neder forever or completely. What did it say in the Mishnah? The part of the neder that's between her and her husband, the husband could nullify. The part of the neder that's between her and everybody else, that the husband can't nullify. Why? Because we understood this to be a neder that's beinoy lebeino, but it's not a neder that's an affliction of the soul. But the Gemara now is saying, if you're going to say that this neder does not include the husband, it just means everybody else, it can't be talking about marital relations. It's talking about hana, that she's not going to have hana from paytas or whatever it is from everybody else. So if so, this is a inui nefesh. As we learned already at the beginning of the Pedic, not to eat paytas is called inui nefesh. So why can't the husband nullify this completely? That's the girsa we have in our Gemara.
Laila means completely.
Yeah. So on that, the Gemara answers, Ei melach, I'll answer you. Or the Bach takes out the word Ei melach, and the Bach reads the word la'olam together with the answer of the Gemara. La'olam shani hacha. That's how the Bach reads this Gemara. So I can answer you that really, or maybe Loilam doesn't go together with the answer, but either way, the Bach takes out the word Ei Malach and says, Shana Hacha, over here, in this case, Yehudim is different than Briyais. It's not because Yehudim, the word Yehudim is different than Briyais. They're both very general terms that includes everybody. But the reason why this case is different, the Muchach Milsa, because over here it's clear that if she's making a neder, she's making a neder regarding something which was mutter for her. When she makes a neder, Netula Animena Yehudim, the simple meaning of the expression is Netula Animena Yehudim. What does Netula mean? Netula does not mean that I'm not going to eat paytas from anybody. Netula means I'm removed. I'm not going to have marital relations. So if that's what she's saying, even though usually Yehudim would not include a husband, just like Briyais does not include a husband, just like Rav Nachman said, but nevertheless, over here, if the neder, Yehudim, does not refer to the husband, so what is her neder? So over here, it's logical to say that when she said Netula Nimana Yehudim, she did mean her husband, because the husband's the only one that would have been mutter to her. Everyone else is anyways also. She's an Eishes Ish. So therefore, this case is different, and therefore we say that she is asering herself on her husband. Okay, that's the Taich in the Gemara, and this is. But if you look in the Ran has actually a different gersa, which is a much simpler pshat. You don't have to change the whole thing over here. The Ran says the Gemara's question was here. So you see it. The Gemara asks the question, V'i omrit Baal, Lav, B'chlal, Briyaisu, if you're going to say that a husband is not part of Briyais, and therefore the husband is not part of Yehudim, Lama La Afara. Why does the husband have to nullify this neder at all? He's not part of the neder. What's the Mishnah saying there? You have to nullify the neder for yourself. For everybody else, you can't nullify the neder, but for yourself, you have to nullify the neder. So the Gemara is just asking simple. Why does he have to nullify the neder for himself? He's not even part of the neder. Rav Nachman says the neder is only for everybody else. The husband is not part of Yehudim or not B'chal B'riyah. So the Gemara is asking, why does he have to nullify this neder? And that the Gemara answers, no. Over here it's clear that she meant to make the neder between him and her, even though she's using a lashon Yehudim, which usually you don't refer to a husband as Yehudim, but because the neder will only take effect between her and her husband, because with everyone else she's anyways aser. So over here it refers to her husband. Okay, let's continue weiter in the Gemara. You see we're holding Yechayla. We're going now to the next part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that when she says that she's not going to have anah from briyos, yechayla lahanis beleket shikcho peya. She still can take leket shikcho peya, which is the obligation to leave over in the field, whether from the corner of the field or things that you forgot or left in the field. That is things that are left for the poor people, and she's allowed to take that. What's the reason she's allowed to take that? Because she's not getting it from the owner of the field. She's getting it from hefker. The Torah says la'ani v'lager tazev. V'isam tazev means you leave it for hefker. So she's getting it from hefker. Says the Gemara, but the Mishnah does not mention Maiserani. Maiserani in the 3rd year and the 6th year from after Shemitah. So the Maiser that you give, instead of Maiser Sheni, which you bring to Yerushalayim, you have to give a Maiser that goes for a poor person. So the Mishnah does not say that she's allowed to take from Maiserani. So it seems like Maiserani is something that's coming from the owner of the produce that's separating the Maiserani. So she made a neder not to have anah from people. So Maiserani she can't take. That's what the Mishnah is indicating by skipping Maiserani. Fragt the Gemara, but Vatanya bebraise, in a braise we learned ube Maiserani that Maiserani is also included in what she can take, even though she made a neder not to have anah from all people. In other words, the Maiserani is considered to be like hefker. She's not getting it from the person that's separating the Maiserani. So we have here a contradiction between the Mishnah and the braise. Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef answers, it's a machlokes. Like kashi, it's not a question. Ha Rabbi Eliezer, ha Rabbanan. It's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. Where do we see this machlokes? So basically, he's going to try to show how you have this pointer that there's a machlokes when the person that has this maiserani separates the maiserani and gives the maiserani to the aniyim. Is he the one that's giving it? He has the right to choose which ani he wants to give it to, and he's the one that gives it. Or no, he's not the one that gives it. He separates it, and now it's hefker, and now the ani just takes it for himself. So the Tanan, where do we see this kind of machlekes? So we learned in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah regarding the halachas of Demai. It's a Masechta Demai. What's Demai? Demai is produce that comes from an Amma Oretz that we know is not careful in properly separating Trumas and Maiseris. So if you buy Demai literally means Domai. What is this? Because we don't know if Trumas and Maiseris were separated. So if you buy this produce of Demai from Amma Oretz, you have to go ahead and separate the Trumas and Maiseris again.
My son is not actually Chapeyah.
Again?
My son is not actually left over the field.
No.
Zogas,
right? Maiser Ani L'chayre is what he has to give. It's different. Oh, okay, so the Gemara is going to explain it. So let's see. So now the question is, D'mai, you have to separate Trumas and Maiseris. Do you have to separate Maiser Ani as well? So Rabbi Eliezer says, Ein adam sarach likres shem al maiser ani shel d'mai. You don't have to be kaida shem. This is when you separate the maiser. So you kaida shem, you designate by name. You say this section of my produce, I give it a name that this is maiser ani. You don't even have to go and designate any of this produce of d'mai for the maiser ani. What's the main reason why Chacham was so machmer regarding the d'mai that comes from an Am Haaretz? Because the halacha of tevel is that if you eat something that Trumas and Maises wasn't taken from it, you chayiv misa. Right? The tevel is very, very chomer. So because it's chayiv misa, so chacham machmer that you should be mafresh the Maises again. But when it comes to Maiser Ani, if you eat something that the Maiser Ani was not separated from it, so it's not tevel. That's what Rabbi Eliezer, that's where the Gemara understands now what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. That it's not tevel, so therefore you're not going to be chayiv misa if you eat from it. So therefore, you can go and eat from this demai without designating the maiser ani from it, so that it should not be tevel, because it's not tevel even without designating that maiser ani from it. You have a mitzvah to separate that maiser ani and give it to the ani, but it's still not going to be tevel, even if you don't. So therefore they weren't machmi, you don't have to designate this maiser ani. Chachamim say kair shem. You do have to designate it by name to designate a part of this demai as maiser ani. But ve'ein tzarech lahafresh. You don't have to separate it. You can go and eat everything, and including you can eat the whole thing, including this that you designated for maiser ani. But you do have to designate it, because by designating it, so it's not going to be tevel anymore. Again, the main point of Yechacham will machma for that it should not be tevel. So once you designate the maiser ani, it's not called tevel anymore, and you're not going to be chayiv misa. But then you can go and eat the whole thing. That's it's machlekes about this, but that's what Rashi, this is brought in Masechta Makis, that's the way Rashi explains it over there. Okay, but so you see over here a machlekes regarding Maiser Ani. is Meiser Ani similar to Trumas and Meiseris? Just like by Trumas and Meiseris, if you don't separate Trumas and Meiseris, your produce is called Tevel. Again, Tevel means untithed produce, which you chayiv mis if you eat from it. And if you don't separate Meiser Ani, it's the same thing. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Chacham say no, Meiser Ani is different. Meiser Ani, even without separating it. And did I confuse the opinions there? Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says that you don't have to separate the Meiser Ani because he says it's not similar to Trumas and Meiseris. And Chachamim say that it is similar to the regular Trumas and Meiseris, and therefore you do have to designate the Meiser Ani in this produce. So now the Gemara connects this to what we're discussing over here regarding this person, the owner of this produce, giving it. Is he the one that gives it to the Ani? So my love, don't you think that the connection, we can make a connection and explain as follows. Laman the Omar Sfeikai Toivel, the opinion that says that if it's a suffix, there are Abanam that say here, that because it's a suffix if the Meiser Ani was taken, and if it was no Meiser Ani taken, Toivel. Toivel means it becomes Tevel. Kosovar, he also holds, Islay Toives Ano, that this owner of this produce has Toives Ano. What does the idea of Toives Ano mean? Toives Hana means that he chooses to give it to which ani he wants. He has a certain hana of the toive that he does to give it to which ani he wants. And some Rishonim say that what Toives Hana means is that if you could choose which ani to give it to, so someone is allowed to pay you off something in order for you to choose to give it to this ani. I want you to support and give it dafka to this ani, so you can make some money off of this, because you're the one that chooses which ani to give it to. So you have a certain Toives Hana from this. So the man dama that says that the halacha regarding Meiser Ani is the same like all Trumas and Meiseris, that if you don't separate it, it will be Tevel, he also holds that you have the choice to give it to which ani you want to give it to. Now, what's the connection of these 2 points? I'll explain in a second, but let me just finish reading the words. V'kivin de islay Toives Hana, because this owner has the right to choose to which ani to give it to, loy mahanya. So therefore, this woman that made a neder that I'm not going to have hana from any people can't take from the Meiser Ani because she's having hana from this person that's basically choosing to give it to her. It's coming out that she's getting the hana from this person. Now, just let me read the other opinion here, then I'll explain what the Ran says. The opinion that says, Rabbi Eliezer that says that even without giving the Meiser Ani, it's not Tevel, and you don't have to designate the name of the Meiser Ani regarding this Demai. Kasavar, he holds, Sveika Einet Toivel, that if there's a suffix, if the Meiser Ani was separated or not, it will not have the status of Tevel. It's different than all other Trumas and Meisers. V'chol Sveika Einet Toivel, and if Meiser Ani is not going to be Tevel, if you don't separate it, Lesle Toives Hana. We also say that you don't have the Hana of choosing to which Ani you want to give to. And therefore, when you separate the Meiser Ani, she comes and takes it, and you can't choose who to give it to, so she's not taking it from you. Vishari le lisanuye. So therefore, when over here, when she made the neder, she could have Hana from this and take this. Okay, so what's the connection of these 2 things? So the Ran says, in Svara, there's no reason to make a connection between the concept of whether the Meiser Ani is Tevel and whether the owner of this produce gets to choose who he gives the Meiser Ani to. But the connection, he says, is based on a pasuk, because it says in a pasuk, "V'lo yechalalu es kodshe b'nei Yisrael," and that "V'lo yechalalu es kodshe b'nei Yisrael" is the source of the concept of Tevel. V'lo yechalalu means you didn't give the Trumas and Meiseris yet. Yechalalu goes in the future, and on that it's saying that a yid should not go and eat from this Tevel before he gave it. That's the beginning of the pasuk, and the pasuk concludes es asher yerimu. This that you are going to Yerimu. Yerimu means you're going to separate, and the Ran says over here, Yerimu means not only separate, but you're going to give. So from this pasuk that it says both these things together, we learn out that those Trumas and Meisres, that the halacha of Tevel applies to it. Regarding that, we say that you have the choice to give it to whoever you want. Asher Yerimu, you could give it to whoever you want. The Meiser of Ani, if you're going to say that it's not included in the halachas of Tevel, you also don't have the choice to give it to who you want. So it's Pashut learned from the pasuk that puts these 2 things together. So therefore, Rav Yosef is saying that from this machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, I can see that there's a machlokes 2 points. Number one, a machlokes whether when you don't take Meiser Ani, if it's Tevel or not. But the main point that's negated to us here is that there's also machlokes that comes out from this, whether the owner of this produce has a Toives Hana to choose who he's giving it to. And therefore, that's the machlokes between the Braise and the Mishnah by a woman that made a neder not to have a na of Briyos, whether she can take Meiser Ani. That's the hasber of Rav Yosef over there. Okay, the Ran also explains al pisvara. I mean, if you think about this concept of ma'aserani, if you don't separate ma'aserani, should your produce be also for you to eat before you designate the ma'aserani? So the Ran says, logically, you would think that there's a huge difference between ma'aserani and regular trumas and ma'aseris. Regular trumas and ma'aseris is only for a kohen, for a levi, or even ma'aser sheni. You have to take it to Yerushalayim, so it's also for you to eat. So it makes sense that before you separate the trumas and ma'aseris, it's tevel. It has in it these trumas and ma'aseris that belong to the kohen, so therefore you're not allowed to eat it, and you're going to be chayiv misa. Whereas when it comes to ma'aserani belongs to the ani, but you're allowed to eat ma'aserani. If the ani wants to share with you, there's no issa to eat. It's not like a zar that's not allowed to eat from trumas and so on. So because ma'aserani anybody could eat, so therefore al pisvara, even before you separate the ma'aserani, it's not called tevel, because it's something that's really mutter for any yid to eat. That's the svara that says that there's no tevel there. But the other opinion that Ram brings learns out from a pasuk that no, even ma'aser ani, which is really mutter for any yid to eat, but nevertheless, before you designate that ma'aser ani, your produce is called tevel, just like by regular trumas and ma'aseris. Okay, but like I said, the Gemara is connecting this also to the main point that's negeya here, whether the owner has the toivus hana, the rights to choose who he's giving it to. Okay, but the Gemara now says that not necessarily is this the explanation of the machlokes of Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanon. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye asks on this and says, no, I'll give you a different explanation in what they're arguing about, whether you have to designate the ma'aserani for the demai. The kulalm, everybody agrees, sveike toivel, that when you have the suffix of this demai, whether the ma'aserani was separated or not, it's tevel. So why is there an argument here? The argument is not whether it's tevel or not. The argument is this Amma Oretz. Are we concerned that he didn't give ma'aserani or not? What the argument is about is the following. Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is we don't suspect an Amma Oretz that's not careful to give trumas and ma'aseris that he's not going to give ma'aserani. Why not? Because even if he wants to separate that ma'aserani, he could take it for himself. How? Kivin de ilu mafke nichse. He can separate the ma'aserani, and then he makes all of his nechasam hefker, and now v'hava ani, he himself will be the poor person. V'shakalein will take it for himself. So v'shakalein will take it for himself. So less leip say this. So he's not going to lose out by separating the ma'aserani. And so trumas and ma'aseris, if he separates it, he can't keep it. But ma'aserani, he'll be mafkir in his nechasim and then become ani himself. So therefore, we don't suspect him for not separating the ma'aserani. Rabbanan Savri, however, Rabbanan's opinion is nichsei loy mafkir inish. A person does not want to be mafkir his nechasim even temporarily, because you have to do a proper hefker. And if people hear about this hefker, the mirsas, he's afraid. Maybe somebody else will come and be zeiche in this hefker that you will mafker all your nechasim. Hilkach nechshadu. So therefore, the Rabbanan say someone else will come and be zeiche in whatever you are mafker. So hilkach nechshadu. So therefore, the the Amaratzim, that is, they were suspected of not giving ma'aserani. So it's a different machlokes. The machlokes is achshad. Are we chayshid? Are we suspecting him for giving the ma'aserani or not? But we can't use that Mishnah in Demai as a source to say that we have a machlokes whether the owner has the right to choose who he gives the ma'aserani to. Not at all. There's no connection to that subject b'chlal that we're discussing here. So therefore, the Gemara gives another answer now to explain the machlokes of the Mishnah and the Braisa, whether this woman that made a neder not to have anah from people, briyos, whether she can take ma'aserani. Rava says the difference is in the Mishnah, it's speaking about the ma'aserani that is being distributed once it's brought into the house, which means you have the produce that grows out into the field, and then when winter comes, so you gather everything into the house. So if the owner is distributing the ma'aserani from inside his house, so over there he's the one that chooses who to give to. The Chsiva Bey, because the pasuk says Nisina. Regarding ma'aserani, the pasuk says that you, the person, the owner, he's the one that gives. V'nesata la levi la ger, and then it says la yasam la almana. So you're the one that chooses who to give it to. So when does this pasuk apply? Only when it's in your house. So therefore, once this produce is in the house, so if she makes a neder not to have anah from Bria, she can't take from the ma'aserani. Why? Because she's having anah from this person. This person has the right to decide who he gives it to. And the Braisa that says that she could take from ma'aserani is because it's talking about the ma'aserani before the winter, when it's still out in the field, and it's there by the granaries, and who gives out this Maiserani? He doesn't give it out. The poor people come and take it by themselves. Kivin the pasuk says, "V'hinachta b'sharecha." Leave it in your gates. Leave it there for the ani to take. So shari lo l'estano yay. So she could go and have a nar from this. So as the Ram brings over here, that really the point is you have these two psukim regarding Ma'aser Ani, and there's a contradiction in these two psukim. One pasuk it says that the owner gives, and another pasuk it says just leave it, which is similar to what it says by the leket shikha and peya, that the owner get tazeh. So what's the answer to this contradiction? The answer is that it depends what season. In the winter, when it's in your house, so you already have more of an ownership over it, it's inside your house, so then the owner gives, so she can't take from this, she can't have enough from this. When it's in the field, so then the owner has to leave it there, and she could have enough from this. Okay, so that explains the contradiction between the Mishnah and the Braisa. So the Mishnah, the Taisus Yom Tov explains, the Mishnah did not want to mention Ma'aser Ani here because Ma'aser Ani is not so clear. Ma'aser Ani depends on the season. Leket Shikha Peya doesn't depend on the season. So therefore the Mishnah says only Leket Shikha and Peya. Okay, the Gemara is going to go into Kayanim over here, the next halach of the Mishnah, but we're going to leave it for tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem.